But I think the event of the week probably was the World Economic Forum, and that gathering pretty much wrapped up in Davos in Switzerland. But some delegates from South Africa say that they hope the effects of the country's strong showing will be long-lasting. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa led a team of politicians and business people to the annual meeting, taking South Africa's message of change and renewal. Throughout the week, business people told the SABC that there seemed to be more investors waiting in the wings and fresh positive interest in the country. Wow, SABC's Francis Hurd is in Davos. Let's cross to her now and just get a sense of how WEF 48 played out. Francis, thanks for joining us. And it looks very quiet. Does that mean that everyone's gone home except you?
Almost. And Peter, it's quite surreal. You see the signs on the shop windows coming down, because remember, a lot of companies are here and they use this as an advertising moment, and it's wonderful. You walk down the street and you can walk into a Microsoft cafe and see exciting things, and into a Facebook cafe and walk in and get a demonstration of virtual reality. But it all goes very quickly today. The signs are literally coming down all around us. The World Economic Forum runs this incredible operation, especially for journalists. There's a media center. Remember, there are only 3,000 delegates to the World Economic Forum, which is why it's seen as so elite, this gathering of people who pay a lot of money to be here. And there's a disproportionate amount of journos covering them, I would say more than 200, but everything is so slick. But they were saying that the Wi-Fi, everything is coming down tonight.
Well, you talk about citizens from all over the world coming to this gathering, but the #1 citizen of America, I guess, was the star of the show today. How was he received? So, with fascination, I guess that's the main thing. There's a Congress hall, and firstly, officials had told us that what usually happens on the last days, remember, these are captains of industry, they're politicians, they have a lot to do. So usually by the last day, everyone is jetting off. Well, the majority of the officials. This time, the majority stayed, about 1,700 out of those 3,000, and they packed into the main venue, the Congress hall, and that seats only 1,500, so some people were left out. But it seemed like everybody wanted to see President Donald Trump. Maybe like me, they haven't seen him in real life. He's this figure that we see so often on media, and it was a chance for people to see him in real life. And he was more warmly received than I expected. And remember, we come from an African perspective, and there's been outrage about his comments about African countries. I did hear from some of the American senior officials on that, by the way, but Trump didn't mention it at all. There were rumors of a boycott of CEOs walking out, but that was apparently African initiated. And remember that the African delegates make up a small portion of these 3,000, so it was always going to be hard. You've got people with different perspectives, speaking different languages from all over the world, and everybody was just interested. And I would say he was quite warmly received, not huge enthusiasm. There was no standing ovation, but there was clapping throughout when he was introduced, and I think people were pretty polite. And I guess this is a different audience. Usually you see extremes. People love him or hate him. Here it was kind of, okay, we're interested. Let's see what he has to say. There was some, Peter, there was some booing that I heard when Klaus Schwab, who is the founder of the World Economic Forum, he was enthusing, he was fawning over Donald Trump, saying that he's the strong leader who's misinterpreted in the introduction. And a few people kind of called him out in the crowd there, possibly thinking that he was being a bit sycophantic with the US president. But then it calmed down, and people welcomed him. All right, so in the end, he got the podium, got a chance to speak. Do you think that his speech sort of left him with mission accomplished?
I do think so.
I don't think he said anything too different to what he said before. He was talking about America being open for investment. Remember, it's been accused of looking inward. And I think he's trying to speak to the business people and say, you can still invest with us. We still want to trade. Remember, America wants to export around the world, even if it wants to control some of the imports coming in. So he wants to attract that investment dollar. He was boasting about Apple's $350 billion investment. So maybe trying to reach out to other investors. And the way of the world is right now that he couldn't speak to this global elite, in fact, without recognizing that people would be watching in his home country, the working men and women that he appealed to. So I think he had to find a balance. I do suspect he would have spoken differently to this crowd of elites if he didn't know that this would be beamed all over the world. But he mentioned the working class, and he said, basically it's good business to care, and America is caring about that working class, and that's why things are working so wonderfully well for them. And pointing out that the stock market is flying, suggesting that if Hillary Clinton had come in, the stock market would be down 50%. So nothing that we haven't heard before, but I do suspect that he would have been a bit lighter. He even called out the media like he always does, saying, the nasty, vicious, fake news, but he didn't say it with much enthusiasm today.
All right, and perhaps as a final question, wrap it all up for us. We know that South Africa has come back feeling that this was a really good mission. What would you say about, this is, I think, your second time at WEF. Was it different this year? What's your sense of what happened this year?
It's been encouraging because it was totally different. Cyril Ramaphosa did stand up, and I was thinking about it. He stood up and he said, I've heard nothing negative about the change that happened in South Africa in December. And I must say, I've heard nothing negative as well. And the business delegates, we've been hearing from them throughout the week, have been saying unanimously, speaking with one voice, that this is incredible. This is different to what they've seen before, the positivity. I even spoke to a banker back home who said there's a lot more interest from foreigners at the moment. So hopefully this will have long-lasting effects. But it really feels like a turnaround, like a new mood, like the action that South Africans have been waiting for is finally being seen as well. And you were talking about Eskom, and the Deputy President and the business delegates kept on talking about Eskom. And I think it's because finally things are happening, tangible things are happening to deal with the huge problems at state-owned entities. Eskom is cited as a risk to our overall budget, our overall financial sustainability. So the action on that helped, I think. But I can tell you this is chalk and cheese in terms of the sentiment and the feeling around South African and South African politics here in Davos.
All right, and that's where we'll leave it. To travel safely back home, Francis, and we look forward to seeing you in studio. And you probably will be happy not to be wearing your thermal jacket when you get back.
Yes, yes.
That was Francis Heard wrapping up things for us in Davos. And what a week it's been, as she said. And we should, as South Africans, have a great deal of optimism on the mission that Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and his team had performed in Davos.